Forgotten in the dark, the room was silent. Not the peaceful kind of silence, but the kind that feels heavy, like the air itself had forgotten how to move. There was no wind, no light, only metal walls and darkness. He had no name anymore. Long ago he did. But now, even he didn't remember it. They took it from him, just like they took everything else. His freedom, his people, his hope. He was the last. They had locked him here 73 years ago. At least that's what he believed. He counted the days in his mind, using the sound of the pipes above that hissed once every 12 hours. It was the only thing that still moved in this place. No one spoke to him. No one came. The prison was forgotten, deep below the alien city above. Everyone else in the prison had died, some from madness, others from hunger or sickness. He had survived, not because he was strong, but because he had nothing else left to do. He lay on the cold floor, skin dry and cracked, eyes blind in the dark. His body was thin, weak, but his mind was still alive. Then, one day, something changed. A sound. Not the usual hiss of the pipes. This was different. It was a click. His ears twitched. He sat up slowly, not sure if he was dreaming. The metal door of his cell hadn't moved in decades, but now, it was moving. A soft creak. Light. Real light. It hit his face, burning his eyes. He raised his hand to block it. It felt like fire after so long in the dark, and then a shadow. Someone was standing at the door, not a guard, not an alien. He could tell by the shape. It was human. Impossible. Humans were extinct. The alien said so. He remembered when the humans were hunted years ago. Brave, loud, angry creatures. They fought until the end. But the Empire crushed them all, so why was there one standing here? The figure stepped forward. Boots hit the metal floor with confidence. A strong, tall body. Short black hair. Scars on the face. Eyes that looked sharp like they had seen war. The human stopped in front of him and looked down. "You're the last one, huh?" the human said. His voice was calm, but there was something dangerous in it, like he didn't fear anything. The slave stared at him, too weak to answer. His throat was dry. His lips couldn't form words. The human knelt beside him and opened a small bottle. Water. He handed it over without a word. The slave grabbed it with shaking hands and drank. It was the first real water he had tasted in years. Warm tears rolled down his face, mixing with dirt and dust. Why are you here?" he whispered. The human didn't answer right away. He looked around the broken cell, then back at him. "I need your help," the human said. The slave laughed. It was a dry, broken sound. "My help? I can't even walk." "You can talk. You can think. And you're still alive," the human replied. "That's more than enough." He didn't understand. What could a human want from him? The human stood and looked toward the hallway. "They think this place is dead. No one guards it anymore. Perfect for hiding. Perfect for planning." "Planning what?" the slave asked. The human looked back at him and smiled. "Revenge." The word hit the air like a spark. Revenge. The slave felt something stir inside him. Something old. Something he thought was gone forever. The human reached out a hand. "But I can't do it alone. You know this place. The systems, the tunnels, the codes. Help me, and we can burn them all." The slave looked at the hand. It was strong, warm, alive. He hadn't touched another living being in decades. He wanted to say no, to stay in the dark. It was safe here, simple, easy to rot and forget. But he also wanted something else. Light, freedom, a chance to feel alive again. His fingers reached out, slow and unsure, and grabbed the human's hand. "What's your name?" he asked. The human pulled him up and replied with a small grin. "Call me Ryan." The slave nodded. Then call me whatever you want. I don't remember. Ryan looked at him with calm eyes. Then we'll find you a new name. After we burn this place down. Behind them, the hallway stretched into shadows. Broken lights flickered above. Alarms were silent. The Empire thought this place was forgotten, but something had started again. The last slave had taken a step out of the dark, and this time, he wasn't alone. The humans planned the cold tunnel stretched into blackness, broken only by the flickering blue light from the human's wrist device. The walls were covered in rust and old alien markings, symbols from a time when this place was full of guards, scientists, and screams. Now, it was silent. Ryan moved with purpose, every step calculated, every sound measured. The old slave limped behind him, weak but curious. His mind was racing. Who was this human? Where did he come from? And why was he here? After a while, the human stopped and pointed at a broken panel on the wall. This is where we rest, but only for a few minutes. He dropped his bag and pulled out 2 small energy sticks. Military food. He gave one to the slave and sat down on a dusty pipe. The slave stared at the food. It had a strange smell but tasted like fire and life. He ate slowly, watching Ryan the entire time. Finally, he asked, "You still haven't told me what you want." Ryan looked up, eyes sharp. "I want to destroy them." "Who?" "The ones who built this place. The ones who turned you into a ghost. The Zanari Empire." The slave froze. Fear hit his chest. Even the name, Zanari, was like poison. They were ancient, powerful, everywhere. No one escaped them. No one fought them and lived. "You're insane," the slave whispered. "Maybe," Ryan said, "but sometimes crazy is the only thing that works." The slave shook his head. "You're just one man, one human. They'll kill you before you even touch their systems." Ryan leaned forward. "You're wrong. I've already touched them." He tapped the side of his head. "I used to be a ghost agent, human special forces. Before the fall, before Earth burned." The slave's eyes widened. Earth had burned? The last human world? Ryan nodded. "They told the galaxy we were dead. Finished, and they were almost right. They took everything from us. Our cities, our people, our sky, but they didn't kill the idea of us." He opened his bag and pulled out a small, glowing cube. It pulsed with red light. "This is a code bomb, built from their own tech. It needs access to one of their main system cores. And guess what?" He looked around. "This prison is sitting on one." The slave stared at the cube. So small, yet deadly. "You want to use this here?" "Yes. The core is under the command level, deep below. They left it running when they abandoned the prison. Probably forgot it still connects to the larger network. If we reach it and plant the cube, we'll send a virus through their communication grid. Their codes, their eyes, their control systems. Fried." The slave felt his throat tighten. "You want to blind the Zanari?" "No," Ryan said coldly. "I want to set fire to their throne." There was silence for a moment. "But I need your help," Ryan added. "You were here when this place was alive. You know the tunnels, the shortcuts, the hidden systems. Your mind is the map." The slave looked away, memories crawling back like shadows. He had worked here once. Before the punishment. Before the chains. He had known the machines, the energy flows, the command routes. He also remembered the screams of others. The torture rooms. The experiments. The smell of burning flesh. He remembered how he begged for mercy and got silence. He clenched his fists. "What do you really want from me, Ryan?" he asked. "Why save me?" Ryan stared at him, quiet. Then said, "Because they left you here to rot. They wanted you forgotten, and I don't leave anyone behind who still has fire in their heart." The slave didn't reply, but something moved inside him again. Not hope. Not yet. But maybe the start of it. Then, a sharp sound, like static, buzzed from Ryan's wrist. Device. He checked it. His expression changed. "What is it?" the slave asked. "We're not alone." Ryan said. The slave's skin went cold. A drone signal had picked them up. One of the Zanari's sentry units. An old model, but deadly. It was close, less than 2 levels above. How long until it finds us? The slave asked. Ryan grabbed his gear. Maybe 10 minutes. The slave looked down the tunnel. The only path was forward, deeper into the forgotten halls. Can you fight it? He asked. Ryan checked his weapon. It was small, half-charged. Not for long. The slave nodded slowly, then turned toward a side hatch hidden in the wall. He pressed his hand to a rusted scanner. It hissed, paused, then opened. This way, the slave said. Ryan stared in surprise. How did you? I told you, the slave said. I remember. They stepped inside just as the echo of metallic feet filled the air behind them. The hunt had begun. But this time the last slave wasn't running to hide. He was running toward the fire. Escape or the hidden hatch closed behind them with a soft hiss. Darkness again. But not the kind that felt empty. This darkness was alive, with heat, with danger, and with memory. Ryan switched on his wrist light. The narrow tunnel lit up in a pale blue glow. It wasn't part of the main prison. It was older, colder, untouched for decades. The slave led the way, slow but steady. His hands brushed against the walls, remembering shapes, hidden switches, old systems. What is this place? Ryan asked, keeping his voice low. Maintenance tunnels. Built before the prison became what it is. Only engineers and builders used them. They're not on any map. You were one of them? The slave nodded. Long time ago, before they turned me into a number. Ahead, the tunnel split into 2 paths. The slave didn't hesitate. He turned left. Ryan followed without a word. Behind them, the sound of metal feet echoed. Louder now. Closer. The sentry drone had entered the main corridor. Can it follow us here? Ryan asked. Not easily, the slave said. But it will try. They always try. They moved faster. The tunnel bent sharply, then opened into a round chamber. The ceiling was high, and strange machines stood like statues in the dark. The slave stopped. This is good, he said. Give me a moment. He limped to a control station half covered in dust and wires. His long fingers danced over broken buttons and cracked screens. Nothing happened. Ryan glanced back toward the tunnel. We don't have time. I know, the slave snapped. Just let me think. His eyes narrowed. He pulled off a side panel, revealing old circuit threads. He reached into the mess of wires and paused. His hand was shaking. His mind was full of memories of screams of failure, of the day he let his brother die in one of these tunnels. The Zanari made him choose who lived and who didn't. And he chose wrong. But now, he had a second chance. His hand steadied. He rewired 2 connections and hit the switch. A deep hum filled the room. Old lights flickered to life. Doors unlocked. Energy systems activated. The machines woke up. Ryan looked impressed. What did you just do? Opened a path below us. And, if we're lucky, activated some defense systems. The slave looked up at him. We fight now. As if on cue, a sharp metallic screech echoed through the tunnel they had just left. The sentry had found them. Ryan pulled his weapon. You sure these defenses still work? I'm not, the slave said, but we don't have another choice. They ran toward a sliding floor panel that now blinked with green light. It opened slowly, revealing a spiral staircase into the deep lower levels of the prison. As they started down, the sentry entered the chamber. It was tall, insect-like, with 4 long legs and a single glowing red eye. Weapons extended from its sides. It scanned the room and charged. Ryan fired. The blast hit the sentry's head, sparking but not stopping it. Go, he shouted. I'll cover. The slave ran down the stairs, heart pounding. Ryan backed up, firing again. This time he hit the drone's leg. It stumbled, then fired back. A plasma bolt burned the wall near Ryan's head. He ducked and jumped down the stairs just as the drone followed, clanking on metal steps. Keep moving, the slave shouted from below. The stairway led them into a massive underground hall, dark, filled with tanks, old engines, and giant pipes that stretched into the shadows. This was a power plant, the slave said out of breath. They shut it down years ago. Ryan looked up. The drone was coming. Can we trap it here? The slave looked around, then nodded. Yes, I think so. They ran toward a control booth above the engines. The slave began working on the old systems again. The sentry dropped into the hall behind them with a loud bang. Ryan fired again, this time hitting its chest. The drone staggered. Almost there, the slave said. Just a few more seconds. The drone fired. A blast hit the wall near them. Pipes burst. Steam hissed through the air. Then, click. The slave hit the final switch. A giant mechanical arm swung from the ceiling. It smashed into the sentry, pushing it into one of the broken fuel tanks. The drone sparked wildly, trying to move. Then, boom. Fire lit the chamber as the tank exploded. The sentry vanished in the blast, pieces flying everywhere. Silence returned. The slave collapsed to the floor, coughing. Ryan stood above him, offering a hand. You did it, Ryan said. The slave took his hand and pulled himself up. His face was tired, but his eyes, something had changed. I haven't done anything yet, he said. But now I remember who I was. I wasn't just a prisoner. I built these systems. I made them strong. He turned toward the deeper tunnels. And now I will use that strength to break them. Ryan smiled. Welcome back, engineer. Together they walked into the dark, toward the core of the prison, toward the beating heart of the Zanari Empire. And behind them, the ruins of their first victory burned. The last spark of rebellion, they moved through the old tunnels like shadows. No, lights guided them now, just the memory of paths the slave had once helped build. Wires hung from the ceilings like vines. The air was thick, warm, and humming with power beneath their feet. Each step they took was toward the core, toward the machine that kept this forgotten part of the Zanari network alive. The deeper they went, the older the walls looked, ancient. Alien carvings showed strange symbols, stories of war, of experiments, of conquered races. The slave didn't look at them. He had seen them 100 times. He knew what they meant. Suffering, Ryan, walking beside him, noticed his silence. What did they do down here? He asked. The slave didn't answer at first. Then quietly, they made monsters. Not with teeth, but with wires, with pain. They wanted perfect control. He pointed to one of the walls. Scratched into the stone were lines, a message made by hand. They are watching even when you sleep. What is this place really? Ryan asked. The slave stopped walking. This is where they killed my brother. For a moment, everything was still. Ryan turned to him. You never mentioned you had family. I don't. Not anymore. The slave stepped forward, slower now. His voice was steady but heavy. My brother and I were engineers. We built this place. We thought we were helping to bring peace, better security, smarter machines. That's what the Zanari told us. He laughed, but it was bitter. They lied. They always lie. They came to a rusted elevator shaft. The doors were jammed. Ryan forced them open, revealing a long drop into darkness. Can we climb it? He asked. The slave nodded. Yes, but be careful. The walls are unstable. As they climbed down, metal rumbled beneath their hands. Halfway, Ryan spoke again. You said they killed your brother. How? The slave stopped climbing. The memory was like acid in his chest. They wanted him to test a neural control chip. It was still in the prototype phase. Dangerous. I told them it wasn't ready. His voice cracked. They didn't care. They strapped him to a chair. They made me watch. They activated the chip, and it tore his mind apart. He screamed until he forgot who he was. Then they dumped him in cell block 0. Ryan was quiet. Then, I'm sorry. The slave nodded. Don't be. It's why I'm still alive. To remember him. They reached the bottom of the shaft. Behind a broken steel door was a large chamber, round, glowing faintly from under the floor. This was it, the inner control ring of the prison's data core. Machines pulsed. Wires snaked across the room like veins. And at the center, hovering, in the air, was a large black sphere spinning slowly. Energy hummed from it like a heartbeat. "That's the link node," the slave whispered. "If we place the virus there, it will ride through every Zanari system still connected to this place." Ryan reached into his bag and pulled out the red cube. It glowed brighter as they got closer to the core. "Once I connect this," he said, "we'll have 5 minutes before the signal burns out. That's our window." The slave nodded. "Then let's do it." But just as they stepped forward, a soft click echoed through the chamber. Ryan stopped. So did the slave. They weren't alone. From the far side of the room, a voice spoke. "You've come far, human." A figure stepped from the shadows, tall, dressed in smooth dark armor that shimmered like glass. Not a drone. Not a soldier. A Zanari High Sentinel. Ryan raised his weapon. The slave stepped back instinctively. "You shouldn't be alive," the Sentinel said to Ryan. "Earth is gone. Your kind is dust." Ryan didn't blink. "You missed a few of us." The Sentinel smiled with cold amusement. "And now you've dragged this broken creature with you?" He glanced at the slave. "We left him here for a reason. Weak. Forgotten." The slave stared back, his fists clenched. "I am not the one who should have been forgotten," he said. "You are." With a sudden growl, he dashed toward the power panel. The Sentinel moved fast like lightning. But Ryan was faster. He opened fire, drawing the Sentinel's attention. The blasts hit his shield, slowing him. "Do it!" Ryan shouted. The slave opened the panel, connected the red cube into the port. A high-pitched tone filled the room as the virus activated. 5 minutes. Alarms exploded across the chamber. Red lights flashed. Machines screamed. The Sentinel roared. He slammed Ryan to the ground with a psychic blast. Ryan hit the wall hard and didn't move. The Sentinel turned to the slave. "You think you've won?" he growled. The slave stood tall. For the first time in decades, he didn't feel weak. He felt like fire. "I haven't even started." He slammed his hand down on the emergency override console. Sparks flew, doors opened, old defense systems activated. Turrets, shock fields, barriers. The chamber became a war zone. The Sentinel screamed and launched himself forward, but the slave wasn't afraid anymore. He met the charge head-on. Blood encoded the room was chaos. Sparks rained from broken circuits. Alarms screamed through the chamber like dying voices. The glowing black sphere, the data core, pulsed faster now, its energy reacting to the virus Ryan had placed. The timer was ticking. Minutes, 47 seconds. But all of that faded from the slave's mind. He had one focus now. The Zanari Sentinel, tall, armored, and crackling with unnatural power. The Sentinel moved like a living weapon. His voice was cold and sharp like a blade dipped in ice. "You don't matter," he hissed, stepping forward. "You never did. You were built to obey." But the slave didn't back down. "Not anymore. I was built to create," he said. "But now I'll destroy." Then he charged. For a moment, time seemed to slow. He moved not with strength, but with memory. His body remembered old movements. How to dodge, how to strike, how to survive. Not as a warrior, but as a builder who understood the weakness of machines. He ducked under the Sentinel's first strike, rolled across the floor and slammed a power rod into the exposed port behind the Sentinel's leg. Crack! The Sentinel roared as sparks burst from his armor. He turned, eyes burning. "You fight like an animal." "No," the slave replied, panting. "I fight like someone who's had enough." The Sentinel launched forward, striking the slave across the chest. The blow sent him flying into a console. Blood filled his mouth. His ribs screamed, but he got back up. Across the room, Ryan stirred. Blood was running from a cut on his forehead, but his eyes opened. "You still with me?" He called out weakly. "Not dying today," the slave said, voice shaking. "Not yet." Minutes. 05 seconds. The Sentinel raised his hand. and the machines in the room began to move. Tendrils of metal and wire slithered across the floor like snakes, rising toward the slave. The Zanari were not just warriors, they were controllers. They bent machines to their will. The slave stumbled back as one of the wires wrapped around his leg. "I made you," the sentinel snarled. "I built this prison. I trained the system to obey me. What are you compared to that?" The slave gritted, his teeth. "You trained the system, but I wrote its code." And then, using his wrist, he tapped a hidden sequence, a short command, 5 digits, 7 to 3 to 4, 1, 0. The entire room shuddered. The machines froze, the wires stopped, and then they turned. Against the sentinel, the auto turrets spun around and opened fire. The sentinel screamed as bullets slammed into his shield. It cracked, hissed, then broke. He fell to his knees, armor smoking. The slave limped forward. "This place remembers its real creator," he said. He grabbed a broken power rod, charged it using the control panel beside him, and raised it high. The sentinel looked up, fury in his eyes. "You are nothing." "No," the slave said softly. "I am free." And he brought the rod down. Crack. The impact was brutal. The sentinel's body jerked once, then collapsed. His armor went dark. Silent. Dead. Minutes. 12 seconds. The slave dropped the rod and stumbled to Ryan, who was slowly trying to stand. "You killed him?" Ryan asked. "We did," the slave said. "He didn't expect us to fight." Ryan smiled through pain. "He should have. They always underestimate those they throw away." Together, they moved toward the data core. The cube was glowing red hot. Now, lines of alien code raced across its surface. Minutes, 44 seconds. The slave looked at it. "Once it finishes, the virus launches through every Zanari-linked node," Ryan said. "It'll shut down their surveillance systems, blind their inner network, cause confusion." "Enough to help others escape?" Ryan nodded. "Enough to start a rebellion." They stood in silence. Then the slave spoke. "You said Earth is gone, that the humans lost. So why keep fighting?" Ryan looked at him. "Because we're not fighting to win. We're fighting to matter." The words sank deep. The slave thought of his brother, of all the prisoners who screamed in the dark, of all the species who were enslaved, used, broken. He looked at his hands. Once weak, now trembling with power and purpose. "I want to fight," he said. "I want to make them afraid. Then welcome to the rebellion," Ryan said. Minutes left. They turned toward a secondary tunnel, an emergency escape route the slave remembered from years ago. It was blocked, filled with rubble and broken steel. "Can we clear it?" Ryan asked. The slave nodded slowly. "Yes, but not fast." Then he paused. He looked at the control panel. Beside the data core, a second option. Manual override. He could force the virus to spread faster, reaching deeper into Zanari command lines. More damage, more chaos, but it came with a cost. "If I use the override," he said, "it'll spread faster. But it'll lock this chamber, seal it completely." Ryan looked at him. "You'd be trapped." The slave smiled. "Maybe that's okay." "No," Ryan said quickly. "You've come too far. You're more than just a tool. We leave together." The slave shook his head. "I was alone for 73 years. I can wait a little longer, if it means they'll burn faster." 1 minute, 14 seconds. He placed his hand on the panel. "Tell the others what happened here," he said. "Tell them the last slave didn't die a prisoner." Ryan stared at him. Then, slowly, he nodded. He moved toward the tunnel, began clearing, rubble with desperate hands. The slave looked once more at the core, now glowing like a sun, and he whispered, "Brother, I hope you see this. Override activated." The chamber hissed. Steel doors slammed shut behind Ryan. Inside, the slave stood alone, bathed in red light and silence. And then, go. A pulse of energy exploded through the systems, racing across every Zanari node in the galaxy. Screens went dark. Stations failed. Ships lost control. And far away, in hidden prisons, old slaves looked up and felt something new in the air. A spark. Revenge of the forgotten far above the prison, above the ground, above the clouds, above even the black towers of the Zanari Empire. Space cracked open like glass, a ripple invisible to the eye pulsed outward, silent but devastating. Thousands of Zanari systems blinked at once. Lights died. Communication towers fell quiet. Security grids froze. Drones stopped midair and fell like dead birds from the sky. The Empire had never known silence like this before. They didn't understand it. And fear began to bloom down below, inside the rubble-filled tunnel. Ryan dragged himself through a narrow gap, coughing and covered in dust. His chest burned. His hands were torn, but he didn't stop. He reached the surface through a forgotten access shaft and looked back one last time. The chamber was sealed. There was no light coming from it now. No sound. "You better be alive," he whispered. "Because if you're not, you better have made it count." He activated his beacon. A low signal, a message for any human, any rebel still hiding in the dark corners of space. "This is Ghost Agent Ryan Hale. Mission complete. Core burned. If you're out there, it's time." Then he disappeared into the night. Across the galaxy, the Forgotten woke up. In a deep mine on Kyrex 9, a creature with 4 arms and chained feet stared at the flickering, collar around its neck. It went dark. A second later, the door to its cage clicked open. No guards came. It stepped out, smiled, and screamed a battle cry that shook the walls. In orbit above Juno Station, a transport ship carrying 312 prisoners lost control of its engine locks. The autopilot failed. So did the chains on every seat. One of the guards pulled his weapon, then paused. A human woman, thin and quiet, stood up and whispered, "Do you feel that?" Then she snapped his neck. The others rose behind her. One by one, the stars began to change. On the Zanari capital world, the High Council sat in silence. For the first time in centuries, they didn't speak in commands. They whispered in fear. "What happened?" one asked. "Unknown virus," another replied. "It came from a dead node, a prison we shut down decades ago." "How?" "We don't know." An advisor entered the room, pale. "We found the body of High Sentinel Varix," he said. "He was torn apart, not by blast fire, but by machinery. And..." He hesitated. "And what?" "By one of the prisoners." They all looked at each other. A prisoner? Not a rebel. Not a warrior. Not even a soldier. A forgotten thing. A slave. The silence returned, this time thicker than before. Then a voice came from the back of the room. Deep, slow, cold. "Find the human who did this," said Supreme Leader Exel Ra'an, "and find the one who helped him." "He's dead," someone whispered. "Sealed in the core." "Then dig," the leader said. "Dig until we find his bones. And if we don't, then this galaxy will bleed." But the slave was not dead. Beneath the sealed chamber, in a level even older than the prison, he had fallen through a broken floor during the blast. His body was burned, bruised, but still alive. He woke up in the dark. Again. But this darkness felt different. It wasn't cold. It was waiting. Machines surrounded him, ancient ones, older than Zanari tech. Forgotten tech. Sleeping, until now. The pulse from the virus had awakened them too. He limped forward and the machines responded. Doors opened. Lights flickered. Voices echoed faintly from hidden speakers. Unit recognized, engineer class. Access restored. His hand brushed a console. Images flashed. Blueprints, system maps, power grids, rebellion signals. Across the galaxy. The Zanari hadn't just forgotten him. They had forgotten what he was. Not just a prisoner. Not just a survivor. He was an architect, a coder, a creator. And now, he would be a weapon. Back on a stolen ship, Ryan watched the data stream. Screens showed chaos spreading, riots in mining colonies, ships breaking Zanari control codes, flags of rebellion rising in dead cities. He saw it all. And then, one signal came in. A voice. Distorted, but familiar. You were right. Ryan froze. They underestimated us. He sat up straighter. I'm still alive. Ryan laughed, low, full of disbelief. Then the voice added, and I'm not alone. Galaxy status changing. The Zanari's control was not broken. Not yet, but it was cracked. And through that crack, the light was coming. The rebellion had begun. When a human came, it started with a rumor. A whisper on a broken radio, barely heard above static. The human survived. On the outer rings of the galaxy, slaves still wearing shock collars lifted their heads for the first time in years. On dead mining colonies, where silence had become law, quiet voices began to speak again. On ruined Earth, beneath rubble and dust, scattered survivors of humanity replayed the message over and over. He's alive, and he's not alone. The Zanari Empire was shaking. High above the capital world, warships floated motionless. Crews panicked as their controls flickered between error codes and static. Their weapons wouldn't fire. Shields failed. Internal lights flashed red. Nothing worked as it should. They didn't know why, but someone did. Far beneath the Empire's core tower, in a secret chamber known only to the inner circle, Supreme Leader XL stood facing a glowing display. A name pulsed on it in alien code. Translated it read, Project Retribution, Origin Sector 17 Slave Node X9342. His hand clenched into a fist. Erase it, he barked. A technician trembled. We can't. The system recognizes it as root code. Then trace it. We tried. It keeps moving. Someone's rewriting the architecture in real time. Zelran narrowed his eyes. Then they've awakened it. Meanwhile, in the forgotten tunnels beneath the old prison, the slave walked again. His steps were slow, but steady. The machines around him lit up as he passed, not out of fear, not because he commanded them, because they recognized him. He wasn't just part of the system anymore. He was the system. He had fused his knowledge, his mind, and the old technology together into something new. Something dangerous. No, his arm, a strange device pulsed with blue light. It was not Zanari tech. It was his. And through it, he sent signals to hidden networks, to other prisons, to broken satellites and old rebel hideouts. His voice was calm but carried weight, broadcast across the stars. If you can hear me, you are not alone. If they told you humanity is dead, they lied. If they told you resistance is over, they lied. If they told you you were nothing, they lied. I am not human, but a human gave me back my fire. And now, I give it to you. In orbit, above the Zanari world of Tier Omega, Ryan stood on the bridge of a stolen warship. Behind him were 10 others, humans, aliens, hybrids, former prisoners, rebels, survivors. They had no uniforms, no flag, no fleet. But they had something stronger. Purpose. The screen lit up with the message from the slave. A silence followed. And then, one by one, every person on the bridge stood taller. You, sure this is the way? One of them asked. Ryan looked at the planet ahead. Tier Omega was a Zanari control node, one of the last fully operational command stations. He nodded. They called us extinct, he said. Let's show them what extinction sounds like. The ship roared to life. On the Zanari homeworld, panic spread. The streets were no longer quiet. Citizens ran from buildings as explosions rocked the outer rings. Underground bunkers failed to close. Security systems turned against their masters. Statues of Zanari leaders were toppled. Symbols of control were painted over with something new. A hand, holding a flame. And back in the tunnels, The slave stood at a high console, staring into a hologram of the galaxy. Dots flashed red. Zenari-controlled systems. Dots flashed green. Liberated zones. The balance was shifting. Behind him, a door opened. He didn't turn around. He already knew who it was. "You made it," the slave said. Ryan stepped into the room. His arm was in a sling, his face bruised, but his smile was alive. "So did you." They stood side by side, looking out at the map. "It's happening," Ryan said. "No," the slave corrected. "It's beginning." "You think they'll come back stronger?" Ryan asked. The slave looked down at the control in his hand. "Yes. But we'll be ready." A pause. "What should I call you now?" Ryan asked. The slave turned to him. His eyes were clear, his voice calm. "I remember my name." "What is it?" He smiled. "Kyle." And so it spread. The legend of the last slave. The story of a forgotten prisoner and a ghost human who changed everything. Children on rebel stations whispered his name. Warriors painted his mark on their armor. And deep in the heart of every prison, still standing, a message glowed quietly on the walls. "You are not forgotten. You are not weak. You are not alone." Because once, a human came, and nothing was ever the same again. End.